A line of Persian horsemen crests a ridge overlooking the Mesopotamian plain. Behind them, the Zagros mountains fade into dusk. Before them, the greatest city on earth, Babylon. Its walls rise 90 meters into the sky. Its gates are cast from solid bronze. A river runs through its heart. No army has ever taken Babylon by force. But the man on the horse does not intend to use force. His name is Cyrus. He is king of the Persians, king of the Medes, king of a new empire that stretches from India to the Mediterranean. And he is about to change the way the world thinks about power. The year is 539, say. For 2 centuries, the Middle East has been ruled by terror. The Assyrians flayed their enemies alive. They built pyramids of skulls. They deported entire nations. The Babylonians who followed them were almost as brutal. In 587 BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem. He tore down Solomon's temple. He blinded the king's sons. He marched the Jewish elite 900 kilometers east. They were not slaves. They were captives. Free but not free to leave. For 48 years, they waited by the rivers of Babylon, singing songs about a home they might never see again. And then Cyrus arrived. But to understand Cyrus, you must go back even further, to the people who made him possible, the Aryans. The word has been corrupted by modern history, but 4,000 years ago, the Aryans were a semi-nomadic people who lived somewhere on the vast steppes of Central Asia. They did something that changed humanity forever. They domesticated the horse, not just for food, but for war. Imagine the first rider, no saddle, no stirrup, no reins, just a man jumping onto a horse's back, grabbing a fistful of mane and squeezing with his leg muscles. He has a club in his hand. He charges at another man who is standing on the ground. The advantage is impossible to overstate. The Aryans used this advantage to spread across 3 continents. One group migrated south into the Iranian plateau. They called the land Aryana, land of the Aryans. Today we call it Iran. Another group continued east into India, conquering the Indus Valley and creating the Vedic civilization. A third group moved west into Europe, becoming the Celts, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Slavs. The Persians were one of the Aryan tribes that stayed in Iran. For centuries, the Persians lived in the shadow of greater powers. To the west, the Assyrian Empire. To the north, the Medes, their close cousins, wilder and more powerful. To the south, the Elamites, a mysterious people with no living relatives, speaking a language isolate but still cannot be fully translated. The Persians were farmers and herders. They were not wealthy. They were not feared. But they had something else: patience. Around 700 BC, a Persian chieftain named Achaemenid united the Persian tribes. His descendants, the Achaemenids, built a small kingdom called Anshan in the southwestern corner of Iran. For generations, they ruled as vassals of the Medes. They paid tribute. They sent soldiers. They kept quiet. And they waited. The man who would break the silence was born around 600 back, or perhaps 590. Historians disagree. His name was Cyrus, or in his native Old Persian, Kuru. His father was Cambyses I, king of Anshan. His mother was Mandana, daughter of Astyages, king of the Medes. So Cyrus was half Median. His grandfather was the most powerful ruler in the region. As a boy, Cyrus was sent to live at his grandfather's court. This was not a kindness, it was insurance. The Medes wanted to raise the Persian prince as a loyal vassal, loyal to them, but the plan backfired. Cyrus fell in love with his grandfather. He admired the Medes, their horsemanship, their battle tactics, their wild energy. But he also saw their weaknesses. The Medes ate with their hands. They burped at the table. They tattooed their bodies and drank wine mixed with a stimulant called ephedra. They were fierce, but they were not strategic. And they ruled through fear, not loyalty. Cyrus began to imagine a different kind of empire. When Cyrus returned to Persia, he found his people restless. The Median yoke was heavy. The Persians paid high taxes. Their young men were conscripted into Median armies. Their kings bowed to a foreign throne. Cyrus began to organize. He traveled from village to village, speaking in the old Persian tongue, reminding his people of their Aryan heritage. He did not call for rebellion. Not yet. He called for unity. The Persian tribes had been fighting each other for centuries. Cyrus made them stop. He created a professional army, not a seasonal levy, but a standing force paid in land and silver. He imported Median weapons and training methods, but he kept Persian command. And then, around 553 BCE, he made his move. He marched on the Median capital, Ecbatana. His grandfather Astyages was shocked, then furious. He assembled an army far larger than Cyrus's. He marched south to crush the rebellion. But Cyrus knew the terrain. He had hunted these mountains as a boy. He led the Median army into a narrow pass where their numbers meant nothing. Then he ambushed them. The Medes broke and fled. Astyages was captured. Cyrus walked into his grandfather's tent. He did not execute him. He did not humiliate him. He said, "You remain king of the Medes. I am king of the Persians. We are partners." He stared at him. This had never happened before. Conquerors did not share power. But Cyrus was not a conqueror. He was a builder. He merged the Persian and Median armies into a single force. He adopted Median dress and court customs, partly to honor his grandfather, partly to signal that this was a union, not a conquest. The Medes did not resist. They had lost the battle, but they had not been enslaved. Their king still ruled. Their gods still stood. For the first time, a defeated people chose loyalty over revenge. The new empire needed a name. Cyrus called it Persia, the Persian Empire. But its official title was something grander, the Empire of the Aryans. Its capital was Pasargadae, a city built in a valley surrounded by mountains, defensible, beautiful, and entirely new. The palace was simple by Mesopotamian standards. No ziggurats, no colossal statues, just stone columns, gardens, and a single winged figure carved into a gate. That winged figure wore an Elamite robe, a Median crown, and a Persian beard. It was Cyrus's way of saying, "We are all here. We are all partners." The first test of the new empire came from the west. Lydia, in western Anatolia, was ruled by King Croesus, the richest man in the world. Croesus had inherited the kingdom from his father, who had inherited the invention of coinage. Before coins, trade was barter. If you wanted to buy a horse, you had to find someone who wanted what you had to trade: a bolt of linen, a bag of salt, a slave. Coins changed everything. Lydian coins were made of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. They were stamped with a lion's head, guaranteeing their weight and purity. For the first time, you could sell your goods anywhere, to anyone, without haggling over weight or quality. Croesus refined the process. He figured out how to separate gold from silver, creating the first pure gold and pure silver coins. His treasury overflowed. His name became synonymous with wealth. Rich as Croesus is still a saying today. But Croesus was worried. The new Persian Empire was growing too fast. If it swallowed the Greek cities on the Anatolian coast, Lydia's trade would be strangled. So Croesus decided to attack first. Before marching, Croesus consulted the Oracle of Delphi, the most famous prophet in the Greek world. The oracle's words were famously ambiguous. This time, she said, "If you cross the river, a great empire will fall." Croesus interpreted the message as a promise. He crossed the Halys River and invaded Persian territory. The two armies met at Pteria, a city in central Anatolia. The battle was brutal and inconclusive. Both sides withdrew. Croesus returned to Sardis, his capital, to wait out the winter. He dismissed his mercenaries, assuming the Persians would do the same. They did not. Cyrus pursued him across the winter mountains, a feat no army had ever attempted. He arrived at Sardis before Croesus could reassemble his army. The Battle of Thymbra was a masterclass in military deception. Croesus had superior numbers, perhaps 100,000 men to Cyrus's 20 or 30,000. He placed his cavalry on the flanks and his infantry in the center. Cyrus arranged his smaller army in a hollow V shape, with the point facing the enemy. He placed his own cavalry behind the flanks, out of sight. When the Lydian cavalry charged into the V, their formation became compressed. They could not turn. They could not retreat. Cyrus signaled his hidden cavalry. They swept around the edges of the V and crashed into the Lydian flanks. The Lydian army collapsed. Croesus fled back to Sardis. The Persians followed and laid siege. Sardis was built on a steep hill, surrounded by walls that were considered unbreachable. But a Persian soldier noticed a guard drop his helmet and climb down a crack in the cliff to retrieve it. That night, a company of Persians climbed the same crack. They opened the gates from inside. Sardis fell. Croesus was captured. He expected to be burned alive. Cyrus ordered the fire extinguished. He said, "No man who has been favored by the gods should be killed. You are my prisoner, not my victim. And you will advise me." Croesus became Cyrus's financial advisor. He spent the rest of his life helping the Persians build an economic system that spanned 3 continents. Lydia was incorporated into the empire. Lydian coins became Persian coins. Lydian goldsmiths became Persian artisans. And the Greek city-states on the coast became Persian vassals, not enslaved, not destroyed, just partners. The fall of Lydia sent shockwaves through the ancient world. Egypt, Babylon, and the Greek city-states all took notice. Babylon, in particular, was terrified. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was the superpower of its day. It controlled Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, and the Hejaz. Its capital, Babylon, was the largest city the world had ever seen. 200,000 people packed inside walls so thick that 6 chariots could race abreast on top of them. Its hanging gardens were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Its ziggurat, the Tower of Babel, rose 90 meters into the sky. The Babylonian king, Nabonidus, was an eccentric. He neglected the city's traditional gods in favor of the moon god Sin. He alienated the powerful priestly class. He spent years living in a desert oasis, leaving the administration of the empire to his son Belshazzar, and was rich, powerful, and deeply unstable. Cyrus began a propaganda campaign. He sent messengers to Babylon, carrying letters in the Aramaic language that everyone could read. The letters said, "I am Cyrus, king of the Persians, king of the Medes. I respect all gods. I will restore the temples your king has neglected. I will not enslave you. I will not plunder you. I will free you." The Babylonian priests listened. In 539 BC, Cyrus marched on Babylon. He did not attack the walls. He attacked the river. The Euphrates ran through the center of the city, passing under the walls through a series of tunnels and sluice gates. Cyrus's engineers diverted the river upstream, digging a massive canal that redirected the water into a basin. The river level dropped, the current slowed, the tunnels emptied. On the night of a Babylonian festival, when the guards were drunk and the citizens were distracted, Cyrus's soldiers marched through the riverbed and entered the city. There was no battle, no blood, no fire. The Babylonians woke up to find Persian spears at their doors, but the spears were lowered. The Persians were not there to kill. They were there to occupy. Nabonidus surrendered. He was taken into custody. He was not executed. He was given a house and a pension. He lived out his days as a retired king. Belshazzar died in the chaos, but the Bible's account of a writing on the wall is almost certainly legend. The reality was quieter, stranger, and more revolutionary. Cyrus walked to the temple of Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. He laid his hands on the statue. He prayed. He spoke in the Babylonian language, not Persian. He declared himself the chosen one of Marduk, a foreign king claiming legitimacy from a foreign god. The priests were stunned. Then they were grateful. No conqueror had ever honored their gods. Every previous invader, Assyrian, Elamite, even the Babylonians themselves, had looted temples, smashed statues, and dragged gods into captivity. Cyrus restored the statues that Nabonidus had removed. He funded the temple sacrifices. He gave gifts to the priests. Then he issued a proclamation. That proclamation was carved onto a clay cylinder in the Babylonian language. It was buried in the foundation of Marduk's temple, a message to the gods, not to humans. It read, "I am Cyrus, king of the world, great king, legitimate king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the 4 corners of the earth." Then came the revolutionary part. "I returned the gods to their shrines. I gathered all the people and restored them to their settlements. I did not allow anyone to terrorize the land. I kept in view the needs of the people." Cyrus was not just freeing statues, he was freeing people. He declared that every captive nation could go home. Every destroyed temple would be rebuilt. Every religion would be funded by the Persian treasury. This had never happened before. Inside Babylon lived a community of Jewish captives. For 48 years, they had waited for a sign. Their prophets, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, had promised that God would send a deliverer. Jeremiah had written that the exile would last 70 years. 48 had passed, 22 remained. But Isaiah had written something more specific, something that would have seemed impossible at the time. Writing a century and a half before Cyrus was born, Isaiah named the deliverer. "Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, I will go before you and level the mountains." The Jewish elders showed Cyrus these words. He was not Jewish. He did not worship their God. He was a Zoroastrian, a follower of the prophet Zarathustra, who taught that the universe was a struggle between truth and lies, light and darkness. But Cyrus believed that all gods were expressions of a single divine truth. He saw in the Jewish scriptures a reflection of his own mission. He issued a decree. "The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth. He has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. Any of his people among you, let them go up. Not just freedom. Active support, Persian gold for the construction, Egyptian engineers to supervise, a military escort through hostile territory." The Jews wept. They packed their belongings. They began the long walk home. The second temple would rise on the foundations of the first. The Temple Mount, the massive man-made platform that still stands in Jerusalem today, was built by Egyptian engineers paid with Persian gold. And the man who made it all possible was a pagan king who believed that all gods deserved respect. The Persian Empire became a laboratory for a new way of ruling. Cyrus divided the empire into provinces called satrapies. Each satrapy was governed by a satrap, usually a local noble, not a Persian. The satrap collected taxes, maintained roads, and raised local armies. But he was watched by a royal inspector who reported directly to the king. The system was not perfect. Corruption was common. Satraps sometimes rebelled. But compared to the Assyrian model, which had been pure terror, the Persian system was revolutionary. Local laws remained in place. Local languages were preserved. Local gods were worshipped. The Persians built roads, the famous royal road from Sardis to Susa, stretching 2,500 kilometers. Couriers could travel the entire distance in 9 days. They established a postal system, a spy network, and a uniform system of weights and measures. They minted coins. The Daric, a gold coin named after Darius, Cyrus's successor, and they allowed their subjects to govern themselves in almost every way that did not threaten the empire's security. The Jews were not the only people to benefit. The Greeks in Ionia kept their city-states. The Phoenicians kept their trade routes. The Egyptians kept their priests. All of them paid taxes, none of them were enslaved. The empire was a partnership, not a prison. But partnerships require trust, and trust requires consistency. Cyrus ruled for 30 years. In that time, he never broke a treaty. He never executed a defeated king. He never burned a temple. His reputation spread across the known world. The Greeks, who despised the Persians as enemies, nevertheless respected Cyrus. The Athenian historian Xenophon wrote a book called The Cyropaedia, The Education of Cyrus. In it, Xenophon portrays Cyrus as the ideal ruler, wise, just, and generous. Xenophon was a mercenary. He had fought for Persian kings against his own countrymen. He knew the Persian court from the inside. And he believed that Cyrus's method worked. The Jewish prophet 2nd Isaiah, whose words were later incorporated into the book of Isaiah, goes even further. He calls Cyrus God's anointed, the Mashiach, the Messiah. No other non-Jew in the Bible receives that title. Cyrus died in 530 B, leading a campaign against the Massagetae, a Scythian tribe in Central Asia. He was old, perhaps 70, perhaps older, but he refused to stay home. He led his army into the steppes, determined to secure the northeastern border of his empire. The Massagetae were fierce. They drank fermented mare's milk. They fought naked, believing that armor was cowardice. Their queen, Tomyris, had lost her son in an earlier battle against the Persians. She swore vengeance. Cyrus tried to outmaneuver her. He captured a large portion of the Massagetae army by leaving a camp full of wine and food, a trap that the hungry steppe warriors could not resist. But Tomyris rallied the survivors and attacked the Persians while they were celebrating. The battle was chaotic, desperate, and bloody. Cyrus was cut down. Tomyris found his body among the dead. She cut off his head. She filled a wineskin with blood and shoved his head into the skin. "You wanted blood," she said. "Now drink your fill. It is a savage end for a man who preached tolerance." But that is the truth of history. No one is purely good. No one is purely evil. Cyrus conquered. He killed. He took thrones that were not his. He was also the first ruler in history to formally declare that human beings have rights that the state cannot take away. Both things are true. Cyrus was buried at Pasargadae in a simple stone tomb. The tomb still stands today, a gabled stone chamber on a stepped platform surrounded by fields and mountains. An inscription, now lost, was carved above the entrance. It read, "Man, I am Cyrus the Great. I gave the Persians an empire and the world peace. Do not envy me this little earth that covers my bones." Alexander the Great visited the tomb 2 centuries later. He ordered it restored. He said that Cyrus was greater than any Greek. The tomb survived the Arab conquest, the Mongol invasions, and the modern age. It has been looted, damaged, and repaired many times. But it still stands, and every year Aryans gather there to honor the king who taught the world that diversity is strength. The Cyrus Cylinder was discovered in 1879 during a British museum excavation in Babylon. It was broken into several pieces. Most of the fragments were recovered. A small portion remains missing. When scholars translated the cuneiform script, they were stunned. Here was proof that an ancient king had declared religious freedom, cultural autonomy, and the right of return for displaced peoples. The cylinder became a symbol of Iranian national identity. A replica now stands in the United Nations headquarters in New York. Above the entrance to the UN's main hall, in 6 languages, are words inspired by Cyrus. they came to the end of their long captivity. They were restored to the land of their fathers. They were given the right to worship God as they pleased. The original cylinder is in the British Museum in London. Most visitors walk past it without stopping. They do not know that they are looking at the foundation of human rights law. The hidden perception is this: Cyrus did not believe in equality. He was an absolute monarch. He did not believe in democracy. He never held an election. He did not believe that all people are born with natural rights. That concept would not emerge for another 2,000 years. But he believed that diversity made his empire stronger. He looked at the world and saw people with different languages, different gods, different customs, different foods, different clothes. He could have crushed them. He had the army. He had the gold. He had the horses. Instead, he asked, "What can you teach me?" The Lydians taught him economics. The Babylonians taught him astronomy. The Jews taught him monotheism. The Greeks taught him philosophy. The Egyptians taught him engineering. The Indians taught him mathematics. He took everything. He gave back freedom. No one had done that before. No one has done it consistently since. The Persian Empire lasted for 2 centuries after Cyrus's death. It was conquered by Alexander the Great in 330 BC. Alexander burned Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, in a drunken rage. But Alexander also respected Cyrus. He married a Persian princess. He encouraged his officers to do the same. He tried to merge Greek and Persian cultures into a single civilization. He failed. His empire fragmented after his death. But the idea that East and West could be partners, not enemies, survived. The Roman Empire admired Persian administration. The Byzantine Empire copied Persian court rituals. The Islamic Caliphates preserved Persian literature and science. The Persian language, Farsi, is still spoken by over 100 million people. Persian poetry, Rumi, Hafiz, Ferdowsi, is read around the world. And Persian gardens, with their flowing water and shaded pavilions, inspired the gardens of Spain, India, and beyond. The empire that Cyrus built disappeared long ago. Its legacy never dead. Today, the world is more connected than ever and more divided. Nations close their borders. Populists demonize immigrants. Religious intolerance is on the rise. We seem to have forgotten Cyrus's lesson that diversity is not a weakness, it is a superpower. The Persians ruled an empire of 50 languages, 100 gods, and 1,000 customs. They did it by respecting differences, not erasing them. They did it by giving conquered peoples a stake in the empire, not by turning them into slaves. They did it because a pagan king from the mountains of Aryan believed that all people deserve to worship their own gods, speak their own languages, and live in their own homelands. Cyrus was not a democrat. He was not a liberal. He was not a saint. He was a conqueror who chose tolerance over terror. And that choice changed the world. The Cyrus Cylinder is a small clay barrel. It is easily overlooked, but it is one of the most important documents in human history. It is the first recorded declaration that the state has limits, that rulers cannot do whatever they want. It is the first recorded promise that conquered peoples will not be enslaved, deported, or erased. It is the first recorded acknowledgement that religious freedom is not a threat to power, it is the foundation of peace. Cyrus did not live to see the full impact of his vision. His empire crumbled, his dynasty ended, his tomb was looted, but his cylinder survived. And as long as it survives, the idea survives that we are not enemies, we are partners, whether we like it or not. Hidden Perception, new episodes every week.